Welcome to the Side Netting Podcast, the place we discuss all the latest goings on in the world of football, play a couple of games, and almost definitely go off on a tangent or two. I'm Connor Burke, and this is our Christmas drink special. I'm joined, as always, by my friend, my cousin, but most importantly, my co-host, and even more importantly, a couple of drinks in, Kieran Burke. Kieran,
Thank God for that. Thank God it's Christmas, as a wise man known as Freddie Mercury once said. And I think the latest podcast we've done, and probably the latest we will do.
in terms of time of recording, we're late into the evening here. A couple of looseners, maybe a bonus livener.
Oh, a little livener. A couple of looseners, a livener, and a partridge in a pear tree.
And a Baileys.
And a Baileys as
well. So we're ready to go, as we've spoken about. Well, we've been building this up for a few months at this point.
We have. I've been waiting for you to do this dirty pint for a while.
Well, you've really not even prefaced it with anything. So so we'll get into who possibly could have won our Road to Christmas games situation a little bit later in the podcast. You may have got a clue there.
Spoiler, it's Connor.
Who could it be? I'm not going to tell you.
You'll find out.
Who could it be?
Stay tuned.
So the way we're going to work this situation is we've got a few games and discussion points. I'm almost certain it's going to go off in many different directions. And we're just going to have a fun bit of time here, kids.
Could get messy.
I think it might get messy. Okay, so we'll get straight into business here, kids. We'll get into
Let's talk business.
Let's talk business. Serious agendas. And not just your anti-Androni and Iola agenda.
Well, you've got a West Ham
agenda. Or my anti-Sean Dyche agenda. But the business agenda. We've got a quiz. As we like to get into, we've got a quiz. So it's a quiz based all around 2023.
Big fat quiz of the year.
So I haven't mentioned it to you before, kids. But every question you get wrong, you have to do 2 big swings.
Oh, wow.
Every question you get right, I have to do 2 big swings. That's only fair.
It's only right.
So there's 1 question for each month of the year that there was football in. So it's January, February, March, April, May. Nothing in June or July. August through to the end of the year. Okay. So question number 1. In January, who was that month's most expensive signing?
In the Prem?
In the Prem. It may even have been overall, but definitely in the Prem.
Oh, God. My memory really doesn't span very far back, so this is a tough one.
It's a big question. It's a big one to start off with. It's a lot on the line, kids.
The thing is,
it's a really much a road to the bottom rather than a road to Christmas.
My instant thought was Anthony, but I feel like he was a summer signing. Don't know why he was my first thought for January.
Well, if you think he was the summer, that's a really bad first thought.
It was, yeah. But usually my gut's been right in recent times. But I'm going to try and have a little think.
Go for it if you want to. I won't stop you.
No, we're waiting. Mudryk could have been January as well.
But was he?
Was he? My memory's so bad. That's nearly 12 months ago now. January signings.
Well, 11 months because the window did close to the end. So
we round up.
Probably.
We round up. For me, it's between Anthony and Mudryk.
He's not 28. He's 27. He's 28.
He's not finished.
He's barely started.
Oh, I'm trying to think when that whole Mudryk saga was going on. Okay, I'm going Mudryk because I've just remembered we ended up signing Trossard and Mudryk went to Chelsea. I'm going Mudryk.
The answer at 89 million King Prince Charles pounds is Mudryk.
Yes.
So I don't kid. Got
was
1 point on the
Anthony
board.
summer?
Anthony was the summer, yeah.
But Mudryk was slightly more expensive anyway, wasn't he? I think Anthony was 80 million. I think.
Was Anthony not over 100?
Possibly. I don't even know. He's shit anyway, isn't he? So.
Yeah, well, but Mudryk's a really interesting one because Anthony's just blatantly shit. But Mudryk teases this really top class ability, and then he's just shit the rest of the time. There's like a little cock tease, if you will, of his abilities, and then he just doesn't bother anymore.
The Ukrainian cock tease. If that's not the title of this episode, something's gone horribly wrong.
Anthony was 82 million.
There you go. So Mudryk takes it.
He takes it regardless. Okay, now...
Well, he's the Ukrainian cock tease for a reason.
Well, no, that's why he doesn't take it. He
Just
makes you
a
think
teaser.
he's going to take it, and then he stops short.
And then he pops off somewhere else.
Off to February now, kids.
Did you do your drink?
I did.
I didn't see it.
You're,
but I'll
I'm
do it
sat
again.
right beside.
I did not see it. You too, me zero.
I may have to do it again if you get this question right. Hey, in February, Aston Villa played 4 games in the league. How many of these games did Ollie Watkins score in?
Oh. Well, Watkins wasn't as prolific last season. I know that much. I know he's been a bit of an FPL. I know we're going to talk a bit on FPL later in the pod, but I know he's been a bit of an FPL bandit this season because he's been doing so well, and obviously Villa doing so well. But I know last season he wasn't as good. Villa did do decent in the league. I'm leaning towards either 1 or 2.
Yeah, hurry up.
Fuck you.
Take your time. Go on. Got an ask to be.
Okay, I'll have a deeper think now. 1, 2, 3, 4. They're all numbers.
Only one of us has to be up at 5 in the morning. And I give you a hint. That ain't me.
1, 2, 3, 4. They're all numbers.
Yeah, I do.
Numbers. I think.
No fucking way.
I'm gonna go 1.
This pod is fucking starting batshit.
Great shit.
Okay.
Chit chat.
The correct answer is 4. He scored in
Fuck
all
off.
4 of those games in
Frauds.
February. So, talking of frauds,
Prove it.
get that drink done.
Prove he scored in all 4 and I'll damn my drink.
No.
No, I won't really. Annie.
Bloody big A. Beautiful stuff. Look at that. And we're off and flying. One apiece. Now to March. In March, Arsenal played against Fulham. And an Arsenal player got 3 assists. A hat-trick of assists.
I know it.
If you will. Which player?
Trossard.
Correct.
I remember it. I didn't remember the game until you said hat-trick of assists, and then I remember him getting a hat-trick of assists.
There we go.
No, not enough for me, mate. Ole!
Straight on to April now. A game we may be discussing in a little bit of time. In April, Liverpool surrendered a 3-0 lead against Tottenham, but then one player rescued the game for Liverpool, scoring the winner. Which player scored the winner in Liverpool 4, Tottenham 3 in April of this year? The cracker of a game.
I usually go for my gut. For some reason, I was thinking Jota, even though he might have been injured at the time. But I'm going to go Jota, because it was my instant thought.
The correct answer is Diogo Jota.
Oh! A beautiful little guess, that one. And a gulp has been had there.
A big gulp. It's 3-1 there, kids.
It's been the theme of the year, really.
The theme of the pod is the second the scores mattered. I think I was doing all right in those early couple of weeks. As soon as we gave something to it, pressure
makes diamonds, baby.
Either makes diamonds or dust, and I think we figured that out, which is which. Okay, now the end of the 2022-2023 season. We're off to May. In May, which teams found themselves relegated as the season drew to a close? So who are the 3 relegated teams?
Oh, that's tough. Leeds or 1.
Okay. Kieran's just having a think here.
That's tough, actually.
You can see the steam billowing from his
Leicester.
ears. Saying Leicester.
Leeds.
They could have got relegated. They won the league. I'd change it if I was you.
I hate to break it to you. Leicester are currently in the Championship.
I'd change that answer if I was you.
Leeds, Leicester.
I don't want to help you, but it's Brentford.
Cheers, boss. Southampton.
It's only gone and done it. It's 4-1. That is correct.
Hold that. How delicious was that on the scale of 1 to bad?
It was absolutely scrumptious. A big much.
Scrumptious in your tongue.
Scrumptious in my tongue. Big up Charlie Will. Scrumptious in my tongue. Okay, so it's 4-1, kids. And we're now off to a new season. In August, who had the honour of being the first goal scorer of a new season?
Oh, that's a tough one.
It is a tough one. Do you remember the first game of the season?
I don't.
That's not a good start.
I'm trying to think Friday night game.
It was a Friday night game, that's correct.
I'm going to go as a wild guess, Ivan Toney.
Okay, it was Man City against Nottingham Forest.
I'm guessing it wasn't Ivan Toney then.
I'm pretty sure. Was Ivan Toney not banned by that point?
No, he wasn't.
Did he play this season?
Yeah, he's played this season.
You sure
he did? Let's have a
I don't think he has. I'm sure the ban happened before the season started.
Maybe it was.
And that makes your guess even worse if it is. You have a look. 'Cause I'm pretty sure he didn't play at all this season. I'm sure his ban started towards some point last season, right?
That could be very
Maybe
true.
in June. You won't be allowed to trade until. When's that from? Scroll to the top.
He was charged.
Scroll to the top. 18th of May.
No.
There we go.
Yeah, but wasn't there a delay on when he actually started
It's
his
from
ban?
the start
I'm
of the
sure it
season.
was. Or maybe it was then.
Well, it runs to because it's January that he can play.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it must be. Do you know what? Do you know what I was thinking of? It's because still a shit guess.
Terrible guess.
But I was thinking. Remember the Arsenal Brentford Friday night game from years ago, like 2-3 seasons ago. That made me think Brentford would have been on the Friday night game, and that was my
they
first
were
thought.
2 years ago.
Oh, close enough. You're going to give me a bonus point? You would do a swig for that, wouldn't you?
So the correct answer there is Erling Haaland.
Wow. So that's a boring guess, though, isn't it?
But the correct guess, though.
I'd rather be wrong and a bit of excitement.
Rather be wrong and living my life.
Not be
right boring.
Right boring? Nah.
Get it? 4-2 is the score as we go into September. In September, the first big upset of the season happened when Chelsea lost to which lower table side?
Chelsea losing an upset nowadays?
It was at that point of the season. This was September, this was towards the start of the season.
Again, for some reason, there's always a first team that jumps into my head, and it was Nottingham Forest. That's not my locked-in answer. I'm just going to have a quick think who else might have been in there. Don't think Luton beat Chelsea. Trying to think teams that are lower down that would be considered an upset. Luton, I don't remember beating them. Sheffield United, I don't think did either. Bournemouth, it could have been Bournemouth.
When you don't know it off the top of your head, it becomes a bit trickier.
Yeah.
I guess that's the nature of all quizzes.
I reckon either Bournemouth or Notts Forest.
What are you leaning? What's your gut telling you?
I'll go with my first thought because that's usually the way to go. I'll go Notts Forest.
The correct answer was Notts Forest.
Hey,
It was Notts Forest.
You little bastard. Goal connect.
Big goals. That's 5-2. You get the next one right, kids. You have one overall. That doesn't really mean much, but bit of pride for you there.
Bit of pride.
In October, and you're going to get this one right, Arsenal ended the month by beating which newly promoted team by 5-0? You're looking unsure when you should really know this.
Oh, Sheffield United.
Yeah, there you go. Sheffield United is correct.
I think you need to.
Now I've got to save the bottom for these last two questions. In November, which Man United player's bicycle kick earned him goal of the month?
Garnacho.
It's not looking good, bro. It's a little bit safe at the bottom for this last question. In December, Spurs set a new unwanted record for doing what in 5 consecutive games?
Losing at home?
No, so losing was involved, but it was going 1-0 up and then subsequently losing.
Okay. I think you got to finish that anyway.
Might as well.
You were holding back. What was the final scores on the doors?
So the final score was 7 points to you, Kieran. 3-2. A big redemption considering your disaster in the last quiz we had.
I haven't quite got over that yet.
A big redemption.
Andy
story.
Carroll will haunt me forevermore.
Okay, so now we've done the quiz. We'll move swiftly on to the next part of our wide-ranging end-of-year pod here. And we've got some end-of-year awards. So myself and Kieran have 5 categories.
No round of applause.
Presented by the human form of your man from Hunchback of Notre Dame. It's Connor Burke. And to a lesser extent, Kieran Burke.
Good evening.
Thank you. Welcome everyone to the Signating Podcast End of Year Awards. Myself and Kieran have 5 categories and the selected winners. We will have a winner each and we'll mutually decide which is best deserving of that award. So up first, we have Player of the Year. Kieran, who is your nominee for Player of the year.
Are we talking Prem solely or
We are
international?
talking a Premier League Player of the Year. It doesn't necessarily have to be the person who scored the most goals, for example. Just who you feel has been the best. Who you think you'd win any argument against anyone with this player being the best.
Well, I think we're going to probably both end up being boring here. And it's hard to look past Haaland. I mean, the amount of goals he scored, like he's elevated that City team, which we didn't think could really happen, to elevate it even more. They've won a treble. It's quite hard to see past the man, the myth, the Norwegian Haaland. Honourable mention to the star boy, but perhaps some Arsenal bias, but the consistency. Like when I watch Arsenal games, it's just like you get him the ball one-on-one, he's just unbelievable. Like you always feel he'll do something productive with the ball. He'll either beat his man or he'll realise he's not gonna beat them, then play the right ball or a nice ball to the back post, or he can go left, he can go right. So I think Saka deserves a shout. I was thinking international wise, Bellingham himself has just been obviously just gone to new levels since moving.
But would you maybe say that's not enough for the year?
Probably not enough for the year. Haaland's been doing it consistently.
My argument, if we're going all round, and again, maybe not enough for the year, I'd make a very strong case for Declan Rice.
Yeah.
Who, phenomenal since he went to Arsenal, solid for West Ham, instrumental in winning the first European trophy. So I think if you're going all round,
good shout.
I'd make a big case for Declan Rice.
Good shout as well.
I think the first 5 months of his year maybe knock that case down when you compare it to Haaland. I'd agree with you there on Saka. He makes a phenomenal case. I think the difficult thing with always is the best player awards, happens all the time, is defenders go under the radar. I think Saliba and Gabriel individually, I think Saliba possibly gets the nudge between the two.
CDMs as well, like we talked about Rice. Rodri's got to be mentioned as well, because
how integral he is to that City team.
The few games he's missed, I saw a stat the other day, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it was their win percentage without him is awful. And it's similar to, as you've said, Saliba, us last season when we lost Saliba.
Do you know what? I feel like the obvious route to go down here is for one selection to be Haaland, one selection to be Saka. I'm very happy to put forward Saliba.
Saliba's up there, but then...
Would you be happy to put forward Rodri?
The thing is, with Saliba, you think, you're talking about 1 year of football. He was injured for how many months? Well, a good 2-3 months.
When you give him his total year, though.
Yeah, but the thing is, if we're talking 2023 and he's not played for, obviously, summer break as well, probably only played just over half of that year. I mean, I'm always up for putting forward the big man himself, but I think it is hard.
On the reverse, if your case is game time,
Gabriel's up there. He's massively underrated. I love Gabriel. Like, he's really ironed mistakes out of his game as well. But I think it's hard to look past the fact with Arsenal not getting it over the line. It's like Bellingham. We just spoke about Bellingham. If Dortmund had won the league last year, which they should have done, and by all means they did bottle it on the last game, he would definitely be up there. And obviously with what he's done with Real is incredible. He was injured at the time. I don't think he played the last couple of games of the season.
Yeah,
so you look at Bellingham, and obviously I think he was injured for the last few games of the Dortmund season, but the fact that they didn't get that over the line when they were so close makes it hard to put, because obviously football's a team game and one individual can't solely propel a team to glory by themselves, but having the team honours to back up, like you talk about Haaland, they won the treble. It's hard if you're talking about a player of the year. Realistically, it's going to come from City. Player, it does. Like it does. You won the treble. That's literally like the pinnacle of football. So for me, Haaland's obviously the other shout. Rodri's well up there as well. John Stones, for the years had, I know he's this season so far, he's not been quite, and he's had the injuries as well.
That's where I think would let John Stones down. And to be fair, you can make the argument that Rodri's suspensions
Yeah,
this
lack of
year.
discipline.
But then you can also make the argument that Haaland's not been consistent enough this season. Where he still scored goals, but he's been missing a few times with City. But really needed him this year.
There is the whole thing with Haaland. Is he a big game player? But then because he scores in so many games, you can't say he's not really. Like, because he's not scored in a final or whatever the stat is. That will come. He's still young as well. That's the thing.
I don't know if there's a Premier League player. I don't know if there's a player full stop who you could say 12 out of 12 or 10 out of 10 months if you take it from summer. Months of this year, they have been at their peak.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to go through those little patches. But I do agree with you that it should be a City player. Based on the year 2023, where they've won a treble. Yes, if you're going for the calendar year, there's been things in this season that's let them down. But has this season so far done enough to offset that?
Definitely not.
I don't think it has.
And I guess when we're talking on City, I was just going to say De Bruyne, obviously,
that's where injuries.
You can't overlook the injuries, but the difference he makes to that team, like the fear I've seen on football Twitter with him coming back, it's like, De Bruyne has seen Arsenal winning a few games, he's pissed off, so now he's grown his leg back or whatever. Like the difference, like I remember us going into Finsbury Park. Oh no, sorry, you didn't come.
I was in Australia.
But I remember going to Finsbury Park.
I was there in spirit.
You were there in spirit. I remember talking to you before that game, and it was like the fear factor of that City team was so much more potent then than it seems to be this year. But De Bruyne was a massive part of that because when he's in that team feeding Haaland, like Haaland's not a man that needs a lot of chances, but with De Bruyne, he has a hell of a lot more chances.
The thing with City this year as well is it's an obvious thing to go down. But when you win a treble, coming off the back of seasons upon seasons of winning trophies, there has to be a natural point where you have a period of time that you just don't have it mentally. And City will more than likely loop back in this season.
Yeah.
But will it happen with enough time? I don't think it will. They'll obviously finish top 4. But I don't think they're going to give themselves enough time to loop back in. I reckon they're going to be a bit like Liverpool last season, where the second half of last season Liverpool were fantastic, but it wasn't enough. I reckon they're going to be very similar, but in terms of time, I know you disagree because we spoke about this recently, where I'm quite adamant that Liverpool and Arsenal are going to pull away.
Yeah.
Do you think City are going to stay with them?
For me, it's hard to still see past City because of what they've done.
Of course.
But we spoke about, obviously, we're not going to tread back over trodden ground, but with
if you want to tread back over trodden ground, listen to the previous podcast available on Spotify, your local podcasting platform, and YouTube. Thank you.
Good best. But it is hard to have the same hunger, but they've still got the bulk of that team there. For me, they'll definitely be up there. Probably I still think they're quite likely to win the league, but obviously I've got the Arsenal side of me that thinks we're a lot more the finished product this year, and if we can avoid injuries, touch wood, but that's the big thing. Keeping that spine. I think Rice, Saliba, Gabriel, if you keep them free, you've got a hell of a good chance. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But Player of the Year, I was
going to say, looping on the actual topic.
I'll go Haaland.
On a tangent?
No way. I'll go Haaland. It's a boring choice, but look at what the man's done.
Based on the conversation we've had, based on the few players that have been thrown out, based on a not wanting to go for the route one, and you want to give those sort of players that maybe, I'm not saying Rodri doesn't get credit, but doesn't get as much credit as an attacking player, I think I'm going to land on Rodri.
Okay. Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
I really dislike him, but he's an unbelievable
He just makes them tick in a totally another way. So Haaland and Rodri are 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Where do we land? Can you see an argument for Rodri? Because I can clearly see an argument for Haaland, but do you think Haaland supersedes Rodri that much that you wouldn't secede to a Rodri choice?
I think it has to be Haaland. I think the only reason why it's debated is because it's like so obvious for Haaland. People want to pull away.
and
But
that's
look
what this
at the
conversation-
numbers.
Yeah.
He's a striker. His job's to score goals. They won a treble, and he broke endless records whilst doing it.
But
It's
Rodri is a midfielder. His job is to be the engine of the team. And he was one of the driving players that won them that treble. Obviously, the Tottenham Premier League. So, one of the driving players that won the Premier League. But he's one of the driving players that won the treble.
He was.
And he was fit for most of the time.
Yeah.
And when he wasn't, his loss was so clear.
Yeah.
I think that's the argument I'd make. When Haaland isn't fit, more often than not, other players step up.
That's true,
When
but for
Rodri
the odd
isn't-
game, though.
When Rodri isn't fit, whether it be for one game or whether it be for multiple, it doesn't feel like they have anyone to step up. They have goal scorers to step up for periods of time. They don't even have a one-game player, I feel like, that steps into Rodri's shoes.
I do agree with that, but I just think that's for the odd game where Haaland wasn't missing for large parts. If Haaland was like a Jesus or Saliba, he was out for 3 months. City weren't winning the treble for me. But I do agree, Rodri has the same level of impact. You think they would have won the treble without Haaland?
Yes. He's
Really?
he's a phenomenal player. He is possibly en route to being one of the greatest strikers to ever play, minimum in the Premier League. But that City team, and even more so, the way they were firing in that latter stage of the season, all they needed was a competent striker, and they have those.
For me, not a treble, though. They would have won the league, but I don't think they would have won the treble. No way. No way. Mainly the Champions League, but...
Do you feel like that's the difference?
Yeah.
But if that's the difference, then this is a conversation about the Premier League, not about Europe in general.
For me, I can't see past Haaland. Rodri, for me, is a close second, but logic says, as a goalkeeper, I'm all for other positions getting a bit of credit, but for me, like, you pay the money for someone to put the ball in the back of the net, and people say, "Oh, tap-ins," but if it was that easy, everyone in the league would be scoring those every week. He has the know-how. He's just got that natural instinct to be in the right place. But to be honest, I'm happy with either. But for me, it's hard to see past Haaland.
I think, sort of as you hit a little bit there, I'm making the argument, I think, more because I think other players should be represented in these, because he's going to win across the board anyway. In every single award, he's going to win or already has won awards for 2023. And to be fair, there's a reason for that. He's not broken records, he's demolished records this season. So it's probably not even a debate worth having, despite having probably spent the last 10 minutes on that debate. But it's ridiculous how good. And I think the consensus is he's not been as good this season. And
still is the top scorer by...
Haaland's on 14 goals. Salah's next on 11. Son is on 10. Bowen's on 10. Watkins is on 9. These are all players that everyone is sort of in agreement that they're firing this season. And yet Haaland, who he hasn't been at his best, and he's still top goal scorer by a couple of goals.
And played 15 compared to 17 for Salah and Son.
Ridiculous. So. Yeah, I think there's no looking past him, Kieran, is there?
No.
Yeah, so congratulations. And I know this is going to be the most important award in his mantelpiece.
He lost out on the Ballon d'Or, so he'll take a side net and pod Player of the Year award.
It's going to be an empty bottle of Styrofoam.
12 empty bottles by the looks of it.
All glued together.
We can fashion a trophy out of that, can't we?
Oh, we got melted down. We'll be absolutely...
Pride of Prague.
Yeah, Pride of Prague, hello. Doing your own bloody mottos for them? Or is that their actual slogan?
No, just established. There's nothing proud about it.
Okay, so we've done Player of the Year. Let's jump up to the next most important award, Shitter of the Year. So this is mine and Kieran's opinion, who are the worst players in the league who play for teams that should be better. So, with all due respect to Nottingham Forest, it's not going to be Chris Wood. It's a player that...
Woody.
is a player that plays for one of the top six likely, who somehow, despite in me and Kieran and I's opinion, being shit, he still manages to get game time for these teams. And in the year of our Lord 2023, he should be nowhere near a starting team in the Premier League. Kieran, who's your choice?
Well, it's quite a tough one because the player that springs to mind for me, and I am going to go with, is up there, and this will give it away, is up there in terms of clean sheets, which really distorts it. And big money was spent on him not so long ago. But my pick is Onana. I just think he was brought in for his ability on the ball, but they've ignored the fact he can't catch a ball. Even his distribution's not amazing. I did watch Liverpool United. It's just not great, to be honest. And the mistakes. There's an argument for giving him a bit more time, but any other position, the regular mistakes he's made, they're getting dropped. And some, like I've seen from United fans, mainly on Twitter, which I don't know how much of an accurate representation that is, but I do have a close friend who's a United fan, and he's very anti-Onana.
Big up Jawad Chad.
Big up Jawad Chad. But for me, it's hard to see past a keeper you brought in for around 60 million that can't save a ball.
Yeah.
And can't catch a ball and has no presence in his 6-yard box. Distribution isn't great by all means. In his defence, the one bit I would say on that is United are not set up to play out from the back by any means. And as a keeper, that's quite hard when you don't trust your back four on the ball.
Yeah.
Because his instant option is to go wide right or wide left. So he's pinging balls out of play. When I watched United v Liverpool, he's trying to find his winger on the halfway line and it's not an easy ball to play. To find your winger when they've got a man around them and to hit him dead on. Like most top keepers in the Prem can usually find that, but particularly the few games I've seen of him, he doesn't really find that ball. So you argue the fact he brought him because De Gea wasn't good enough with his feet, and you brought in Onana, but he's not good enough with his hands, which is the point of being a keeper. The ability on the ball is like the nice secondary part, but I think they've glazed over the main fact. So for me, it's Onana. I think he's been massively underwhelming. He was a player it was really spoke about a lot, like the likes of Gary Neville. He's going to have one of the biggest impacts on a team because they can now play out from the back. But then you're starting Johnny Evans and Maguire as your centre backs.
Talking of players starting the year of our Lord 2023.
Johnny Evans. Crazy. It's meant. Do you know the funny thing is though? He actually has done okay. Like United's defensive record isn't as bad as it should be. But it's just, as a team, they do not gel.
As a collective.
They're always waiting on a moment of brilliance. Hence, we've spoke about Garnacho overhead kick in the little quiz. They rely on a flash of brilliance like that to win a game. There's never control in the game.
Right.
And saying that...
And these are flashes of brilliance and moments of winners. You look at them consistently. It's against mid-table and worse teams. They're not beating better teams because they're not good enough to do that.
No.
They're having these flashes of brilliance against
Sheffield United and
against relatively poor teams, and they're then getting either comfortably beaten or striving to a draw against better teams. I would say Chelsea withstanding, but we've made our opinion on this Chelsea team very clear. Despite being a classic Big Six team, they're not a big team. They are a mid-table team. So, I think that's a very solid argument for Onana there, Kears. Across the whole year, I don't think you can argue with that for Onana. And I've got two players in mind. There's one I'm going to land on, so I'll do him second. But not my first player who just misses out, I think, on my pick. He was a massive money signing in the summer. But before that, he'd been objectively poor across all of the 22-23 season. He'd basically faded into the midfield. You could barely notice him in a game. I'd say 90% of Chelsea games last season, you wouldn't notice him. And then there was a big money signing in the summer for United. And I don't think there's been a single moment for Mason Mount this season where he has done anything.
He's gone under the radar massively as well. Look at the pressure Havertz has had. Same money, by the way, and now he's coming good. But the pressure, I've not heard of. I know Mount he was injured for a brief spell, but even still, when the games he played, he was as you said, you didn't notice him,
and that's quite surprising as well, because I would say it speaks to Man United and their general aura at the moment. But really, they're a team that, based on who the Sky Sports pundits are, especially in the general media scope, is going to be Man United be one of the biggest teams in the country. And they've spoken about a lot. He seems to be a player that just misses out time and time again from needed and deserved criticism. And I don't know if it's because he's like an England star or anything like that, because that does happen sometimes, but he's just an incredibly mediocre midfielder who isn't good enough to be in a team that expects to finish in the top 6. But he does miss out because my number 1 pick is someone who he was signed for, including add-ons, 60 million, but he was signed for 50 million. And I'd say he's probably had 2 moments, and maybe recently there's been a couple of moments where recency bias could blind you to how poor Richarlison has been for Tottenham. When you sign a player for 50 million, and like a couple of seasons ago when he was signed, was it last summer, 2022 into 23 summer? Like, that was a big money sign. And I know it sounds like back in my day last year, but it's just the quantity of big money signings that have happened since then. He was a player that was meant to be big things for Spurs. And I would arguably say that the biggest thing that's happened to him is scoring against Liverpool seconds before they went back and scored the winner. And when that's the biggest thing that's happened
to him... Or scoring offside goals.
Well, there we go.
And taking your shirt off and getting booked, and then it gets disallowed.
Beyond being embarrassing in that sense, he's just not good enough. When you have a player like that as one of your relied upon forwards, it's not good enough.
In the words of Ian Wright, Mr. Pigeon, I thought you were dead.
It's one of those things that when you sign a player for that level of money and he just doesn't perform, it's not good enough.
Yeah. No, agreed.
I think similar to what you're saying about Onana, but obviously at the opposite end of the field. When you sign a player like that who's meant to add so much quality, and they just, more often than not, they actively detract from your team, not good enough.
The funny thing with Richarlison was his one defence has been Spurs signed him without a real plan. They still had Kane up top, Richarlison's favourite. He's always done decent for Brazil in striker position. And it was always a bit weird with Spurs because they signed him and then they were trying to fit him in. They were playing him on the wing. They were playing him just behind the striker. Since Kane's left and he got a bit of a chance at the start of the season to have a go up top, he was absolutely dreadful.
Yeah.
Not doing a single thing. So they reverted to Son up there and were flying. So it just shows, even if he's in his preferred position, I think that's the one defence I'd have of Mount, even though I think he's disgustingly average. United have signed him. They don't have any plan. That club is just toxic at the moment. And that's the defence you can't have of Nana. You're playing in goal. I know I've said about his backline can't play out either, which never helps. But you're a goalie.
But there's been moments with him where he should have made simple saves.
He's cost them points.
He should have been confident on the ball, even just clearing. And he's not. His distribution has been poor. His shot stopping has not been good enough. Like, regardless of who you got in front of you, as a goalkeeper, you still need to step up in those moments. And more often than not, he hasn't.
In mediocre teams, as a keeper, you can still stand out and still be like a lot of the time, that's how a keeper gets a big move because they're seen as the best player because they're constantly bailing their team out. But it's the other way around for him. He's adding to an already let's be honest, shit United team.
Yeah.
And I think they're lucky to be where they are this season so far. And I think United fans would agree with that if I'm being honest. But yeah, that's my one defence for Mount. He's literally floating about there. No, Bruno's the preferred 10. that's probably his preferred position. He got dropped back alongside kind of Casemiro, floating about. No real. To be fair though, a smarter footballer would adapt and be able to thrive there. Like, I'm not saying Havertz is the best player in the world, but you're now seeing him come good in that left centre mid position, which there's a lot of doubts over him. We've got Odegaard, we don't need Havertz, we've got Jesus. He's more of a striker or a cam. And now you're starting to see him come good with Rice, with all that protection he brings to allow him to go forward a little bit more, starting to have the intelligence, a bit that confidence on the ball. I'm not saying he's the final product because he's not, but he's definitely showing glimpses now. Mount, as I said, he has had the injury, but the games he's played, he's not been enough. And I think he's fit now and he's not getting selected.
100%. And like you sort of say, him not being in his preferred position, that might be the edge that Richarlison has on him in terms of being shit.
Yeah.
But I think this is a lot closer one in terms of where we're going to land with our winner here. Tough one. I think Richarlison has had a lot less redeemable moments, whereas I guess that sometimes does happen when you're in goal where you just have the chance to make the odd save, the odd moment. But I think Richarlison has maybe a couple recent redeemable moments that do not, for me, wash over the rest of the year. I think Onana has had the odd game, more so, where he's maybe won United the game, but it just doesn't happen often enough. But it happens more than it's happened for Richarlison for me.
I think what edges it towards Richarlison, Onana obviously got to the Champions League final with Inter before going to United. In my opinion,
that's
he
the
wasn't
other thing.
amazing.
We're talking the whole year, aren't we?
We're talking the whole year. For me, even still, he wasn't amazing in that team. Like, I've saw a bit, like, obviously I watched the Champions League quite closely, and there was games like against, I think, Barca, when they played Barca, he made a couple of mistakes in that game and got bailed out. And then since he's gone to United, obviously followed the Premier League more closely than any other league. And he's been very, 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 very underwhelming. I think because of the hype placed on him that he was going to elevate this United team. And let's remember, United were tipped by some for the league, let alone top four. Comfortably top four is what a lot of people said.
These were because I remember me and you having a conversation where we were just a bit dumbfounded at why they were tipped so highly.
Yeah.
I remember that being our overwhelming conversation topic on United in the pre-season pods was, how is this team tipped so highly? And Onana was a part of that tipping, but I do think where Richarlison has the edge is what we said before with player choices in the best player. He's not been shit for long enough.
Yeah.
Whereas Richarlison has been shit basically since the 1st of January 2023.
And as I said, when given his chance in his preferred position, because you can argue, Kane was up there. The only reason he wasn't starting was because Kane was there. Well, it wasn't, because he weren't good enough. You've seen other players. Son, perhaps his preferred position is through the middle, but he's always performed on the wing because he's a good enough player. If you're a good enough player, you can do it in more than one position. And Richarlison, I'm happy to go with him. Partly backed by a bit of hatred there, but he's just shit.
Don't know if the hatred was there. I'm like, stay. He's not shit. He's great. But I think we'll land on that. Congratulations, Richarlison. You're fucking dreadful. Well done. In
Merry Christmas.
In a range of teams in there who have some terrible players, you're somehow the worst of the prominent players. So congratulations. You're dreadful. Up next, we're going to go for Game of the Year. So with this one, we're going to pick an Arsenal-based game, because that bias will definitely seep in.
Yeah.
And we're going to pick a non-Arsenal-based game. And these all, obviously, that's with the pod. Premier League games. An Arsenal-based and non-Arsenal-based game of the year. Kieran, what is your Arsenal selection?
One choice for me is Arsenal v Bournemouth. And there's a few others that have been up there. But for me, that was the one moment. I remember I was watching it around my dear friend Charlie's house and going absolutely mental in his living room.
Our mutual friend?
Our mutual friend. When that Reece Nelson cracker went in. I think I'd kind of accepted the fact we were dropping points. And then literally, as it fell to Reece boy, there was a few games up there, because Arsenal Villa last season comes up there. because I remember I was sat in a car park in Cambridge watching the game on my phone. And because me and my fiance had been staying overnight in Cambridge and we were due to come back that day. And obviously Arsenal Villa was on, so I was like, just let me watch the last. I was in the lift coming up. It was literally like the 93rd minute. I was losing signal. I had a Twitter stream up on my phone. God bless the streams. Completely legal means all round. And like it was cutting in and out. I was like, for God's sake, we got back into the car, got the game back on, and literally like 30 seconds later, the Jorginho, I say the Jorginho goal, the Martinez own goal.
The Jorginho classic.
The Jorginho moment, but that's up there as well. But I think for pure like thinking this really could be it now. And on the back of that, the worst game of the year was Arsenal v City. I mentioned before about going down to watch it. It was just we didn't show up at all. They were so dominant in that game. There wasn't even a glimpse of us yet. And you really saw the goal. I think, what was it, 4-1 in the end? And it was just... And there were Sky cameras filming in the pub we went to. I think it was the Gunners pub or Arsenal Tavern, Finsbury Park. And everyone was literally getting so pissed off with him. I felt quite bad for the camera operator because he was getting all sorts of abuse. But obviously they're looking for clips if we'd won like the elation, but it didn't work out the way, and not a good.
That was the first one, wasn't it?
No, the last.
Oh, the second
in
one.
April.
Yeah, because there were two not too far removed, were they?
Yeah, it was the last one, and
I remember getting up at 5 a.m. to watch that game. It was that run. It was the 5 a.m. for that game. It was 5 a.m. for Southampton. It was 5 a.m. for the Chelsea game.
I was pissed off enough, let alone having to wake up for that. But this was meant to be a cheery category. Games of the year.
Well, you said worst games. You've set it on a really different path. I thought
to offset the bias,
to make us depressed.
Bad as well. But Arsenal Bournemouth for me.
Oh, unbelievable!
Was the Arsenal game of the year?
I think all of our answers, for Arsenal especially, and maybe even, I know mine for Premier League Game of the Year, are all last season games. As good as this season has been, you could go for the Arsenal United game early this season, where Rice scored the 2 goals at the end of the game. In a similar fashion to that Villa game, actually. But I think the way last season ran, those Arsenal games with that point in the season just meant that bit more.
Yeah.
And the thing with it is how it ends. Does that taint it at all for you? Especially the Bournemouth game.
It does, but then I just think back to that moment.
The moment, how you...
Because it's so recent, I still can remember that moment of thinking, shit, we're doing it. But then obviously we came crashing back down to earth. But I still hold that memory in high regard because it was that moment of ecstasy was up there. It was up there. My game of the year is actually one this year, and recency bias creeps in, and it's quite a weird one because it's a 1-0 game. So by all kind of logic, you'd think it can't have been a good game. But I'm going Aston Villa v Man City.
That was a fantastic game of football.
Even though it is a 1-0, and it probably is a bit of recency bias, but I watched that game, and the way both teams were just playing pure football, every time either team got the ball, it was they're playing out from the back, the little triangles, the intricate football, unbelievable. And Villa outplayed Man City at football, which I've only ever seen Arsenal do once, which was the New Year's Day game we lost 2-1. Because even the game we won, what was it, 1-0 recently? I don't think we outplayed them. It was quite a stale game, and it was very much cancelled each other out. Looked like it was going to be a 0-0, and Martinelli got that deflected goal at the end, which perhaps we got a bit lucky. But the Villa game, they outplayed them at football the full 90 minutes, and obviously City had their moves as well, as City will when they get on the ball. But in terms of pure footballing, a footballing game with the tactics, the little intricate moves, honestly, that was one of the best games I've seen because it was just class from both teams, but Villa even more so. Which is why when we spoke about the Arsenal Villa game, when we lost, I was probably less disappointed than I should have been because I felt we outplayed them.
Yeah.
And for me,
Oh, no, we did
early,
outplay them.
for me, early in the season, that's perhaps not more important than the result, but it's up there alongside the result because that's a sign of things to come throughout the season. We spoke about United. Even games they've won, they've looked awful.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of concern for them. Whereas that game, seeing City play them 3 days before and get completely outplayed, and I'm bringing it back into Arsenal now. That was my that was my game of the year.
We very specifically split this up so that there wasn't going to be any Arsenal bias seeping through. But I can understand that. In terms of the current season we're in, I think that's my game of the season.
It's weird because there's been like the 4 rules, like there's Chelsea City, Arsenal Chelsea, a lot of games with Chelsea, Liverpool,
Chelsea Spurs.
No, so that was the one I was thinking of. Chelsea Spurs. But
as you said, Chelsea City as well.
For me, some of the open games, it's quite messy.
Yeah,
it's brilliant to watch, but it's not like it's usually mistakes that are causing all these goals. That City Villa game was just pure football, and it was just like.
It was just unbelievable. In terms of pure football, an unbelievable game of football. My Arsenal one. So we said about Bournemouth and last-minute winners, and obviously you were saying where you were in those games. And I don't know if you know, listener, but up until August of this year, I was in Australia. And in January, I was in Melbourne. And I was specifically in St Kilda in a hostel. And in this hostel in St Kilda, there was like a front room area where they had a Fire Stick on the TV with like Netflix, etc. And I downloaded Optus Sports, which is what the Premier League is on out there. And this is 3:30 in the morning, 4:30 game, no one else around, everyone's in bed because even despite the alcoholic wasteland that is a hostel in Australia, they have some sort of semblance of normality and they went to bed. I was up in the front room on my own, download Optus Sport on the telly, logged into my Optus Sport, sat in there, and I watched Arsenal against Man United. And at around about 5 o'clock in the morning, 5:15 in the morning, I was jumping around, trying to restrain any noise in me as we scored the winner.
This
is what the Nketiah goal. As we scored the winner against Man United, late Nketiah, and just it being United adds to it. It being the first of those late winners.
What point in the season was that?
January. This was January.
That was January. As early as January.
Yeah, because I was in Melbourne at that point. During the Bournemouth and Villa games, I was in Sydney. Bournemouth, I was in a hostel, but that was in my room. I had to hold it all in. I was in my room late at night, and that one I was at least space to jump around in Melbourne. And it was just one of those moments. It was like this. It was the first moment where I felt like this could happen. This Arsenal team is pushing things over the line. But on top of that, where the Bournemouth game's tinged with a little bit of, like the Leicester game where Welbeck scored a couple of seasons ago, where it didn't happen. The United game, it was still a winner against United. We still beat United, and in isolation, it means a lot more than the Bournemouth game.
Yeah,
and it being like me being away and everything like that meant like being away as Arsenal played this well was really weird. It's really anyone that is listening who's been, even if they've been on holiday when their football team's been playing, but at that point living in another country while Arsenal playing well, and there's a potential that after years of it not happening, they could win a league with me being in another country with like my mates and family who I watch football with being at home. And it all just adds to this really weird amalgamation situation.
That was the one, obviously I wanted us to win the league. That was the one thing I was like, not glad, but it's like, if it happens this year whilst you're back.
Oh no, I'm actually leaving the country on a week before.
Fair play to it. No, but it'll make it that bit more special because it's like, you'll have the moment.
Yeah, of course. Like I actually think we've been together either on the game or on the day for every domestic Arsenal trophy since after the FA Cup. So all those FA Cups. The COVID one, Kieran went to Box Park for the game at Wembley. I met him afterwards, but we met each other on that day.
I was there and embodying it, not in mind. Hence why I ended up in the road.
I was like, Kieran nearly got run over that day outside a Weatherspoons.
We've all been there.
We've all been there. Everyone gets that. But
good time.
But these are like big moments. When you're away, it just adds this weirdness and this weird situation. That's a weird tinge is the wrong word because I think it added, like me being on my own in that situation, added to those games, and that's why that Arsenal United game, was massive. I think that's my game of the year for Arsenal. But there's been a lot, and we're very fortunate. There's been a lot. My general game, and it's not just a let's all laugh at Spurs situation. It was just an insane game of football, and it's a game we spoke about a couple of times today. It's Liverpool 4, Spurs 3.
Was that the great VAR debacle?
No, that was early on this season. That was 2-1. This was when we were speaking about a moment ago when Richarlison scored the equaliser, went mental, and then Jota went and scored the winner. That was that game, and it was just one of those games where you watch it and you think, how can you not love football?
Yeah.
Like, obviously, if you're a Spurs fan, it's very easy, but for everyone else, how can you not love football? Because it's just mental. And there's been a lot of...
Like this year, there's been a lot more of that.
There's recency bias, but I feel like this year, in terms of pure games, is probably one of the best calendar years.
I really think it has. Because you've never had the 4 rules, the 4 threes, to the extent we've had them this season. Maybe, as you say, that is recency bias, but I really don't think we have. Like, between the big teams, the amount of times you see a 0-0, like we've looked at Liverpool United on the weekend, but you see a 0-0 and it's kind of becomes a bit... This year it's an anomaly, but it's kind of become the norm recently where two teams neither really asked to go and try and win the game.
Yeah.
They're pretty happy, more so from the away team usually, but they're usually pretty happy to take a point. But this year it's like going at each other. It's been brilliant.
There's so many choices this season. Like, I think this one, it's going to be very difficult to come to a winner because there's so many games you're like, oh no, that's fair enough.
Chelsea City was my close second because I remember watching that game, and again, maybe recency bias.
That's your close second, that's not your pick.
No, that's not my pick. Was City Villa.
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
of course.
But my close second was that City Chelsea game. So I remember watching that, and it was literally end to end. No team looked like they had any concept of defending at all, and it was just pure chaos. But for me, the tactical element to the Villa City game and watching Villa outplay Man City at football was quite astonishing for me, which is why I went for that game.
Yeah, I think where, for me, the Liverpool Spurs games has the edge is it's not just a high-scoring game. Liverpool were 3-0 up.
Yeah.
They were 3-0 up and then Spurs came back and then they scored a winner. Like, that's very different to just a back-and-forth game where, like this City-Chelsea game, where a back-and-forth game is just high-scoring and the defences ran off.
The drama adds to it, let's be honest. In terms of just watching and admiring football, for me, it was Villa City, but in terms of a game of the year, I think that Liverpool Spurs game.
I think if you're talking performances of the year in terms of a back and forth contest, that might have your edge in terms of two teams playing at a high level. Well, I said she did put it high level, so it didn't have a more than a shot on target on that game. But still, Villa may have the performance of the season in that game. But I think as a game, as a spectacle,
it is that game.
And where did you land on Arsenal?
So it's Bournemouth, Arsenal v United.
In the feeling in the moment, I'd maybe agree with you as you say, it felt like the moment where, oh fuck, we're winning the title.
Beating United is always beautiful, but it was like accepting we'd fucked it and we dropped points v Bournemouth, who were bottom of the league at the time, and that moment of euphoria where we thought it was all gone, and it's fallen out to Reece Nelson, his weak foot outside the box, and he's twatted it in like a real rotation player who barely seen a minute all season.
I remember all day the next day, just going through Twitter and watching reaction videos.
I still like, because he won the Game Changer award or something at the end of last season.
Who, Nelson?
No, I think they actually awarded it early this season, so there was less of the pain involved. So I was rewatching it, but like that moment.
It's insane.
I still smile thinking about it. Even though we fucked the league, I still smile thinking about it because there's that euphoria tied to it, which I think overrides any feeling of annoyance. But I do get your point about, obviously, beating United's always a beautiful thing, but I think that moment was just beautiful.
I think
beautiful.
I think you're right. I think that has to be the game that takes the edge for everything that game represented. It was just an insane moment in the season and in everything that happened. I think that has to be the winner there.
Yeah.
Well, I think next, I think we should end. There's 3 more awards. My apologies. Next is Surprise of the Year.
Surprise? Are we talking player? Are we talking team? Are we talking moment?
Whatever you'd like to go. I'm going for Aston Villa. I think it's an easy choice, but from the moment that Unai Emery walked into Villa Park to now, I don't think there's another choice for surprise. You think where they were when Gerrard left to where they are now, not a single soul saw that coming. I couldn't think of any other player, moment, manager that surprised me more this year than Villa's transformation.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that one. I'm trying to have a little think myself. Surprise.
We can move on if you're happy to just land on Villa, but if you've got another thought, then we can discuss that as well. Yeah, I think if they just have done last season and then this season sort of peaked a bit like Brighton, then no. But based on where they are at this moment, who saw that coming?
For me, the surprise, I know we've just mentioned before the year, we were saying it was a bit of a surprise people had them so high. But United being as bad as they are, paired with Rashford falling off as much as he had, is my joint surprise.
I can back that.
Well, yeah, you had him second, what was it, second top scorer?
25 plus
Premier League goal. Was he on now 1? I think.
Is he on that much?
Yeah, congratulations. But I think with United, they've spent a lot of money. They have supposed class. I was going to say world class. They've got supposed, up towards world class players, and nothing's clicked for them. The manager has not implemented his play style. The likes of your Fernandes, your Rashford,
the Fernandeses, your Rashford,
your Casemiro. I know he's been injured. Varane, who's been frozen out. Maguire and Evans has been referred to him at large parts of the season. De Gea obviously leaving the way he did, and Onana coming in. Like, for me, I think slightly overshadows the fact of United that they're still picking up points. Because for me, there have been a bottom half team, let's be honest. The performance they had in the Champions League to finish bottom of the group they did, and not even getting the Europa League.
When that group was scored, United have finished second?
Yes. Without a second thought.
Yeah, they might
Copenhagen and Galatasaray were the other teams in that group.
They might stumble a little bit, like you may have a surprise loss there, but they'll win out. They'll end up
that's
okay.
No disrespect, because Copenhagen, fair play to them. They've done an amazing job, and even Galatasaray to get Europa League. But Man United, come on, you have to be doing better there. And Prem in general, they've picked up a few points. They're sat in 7th, but that really paints a different story.
They have the joint worst goal difference with Fulham in the top 12 with -3.
We've spoken a bit before about the whole Emery thing and that kind of last season of Emery before he got sacked. The feeling of going into every game, even when we won games, there was such a toxic feeling about the place.
Yeah.
It's like, even if we won a game, it was the play style was shocking. The players, there was no fight there. There was no connection between the fans and the team. And that's exactly what United are in at the moment.
Yeah. This is going back to Arsenal again. But it's a wider point, I feel like. Do you feel like there's a lot of revisionism around Emery's time at Arsenal going around at the moment because Villa are doing well?
Yes.
It's insane.
It's mental. Look at what Arteta's doing.
Regardless of what Arteta's doing now, I was there. We were all there. Why are we pretending that it was anything other than managers can go to one club and be poor or average or not good enough, and they can go to another club and be very, very good. And that can happen. That can be a thing that exists. People are dualities. They can not be good enough at one club or in one situation. They can go to another club and they can be phenomenal. That's what's happened with Emery. I'd almost say that Arsenal were the anomaly, where it's not that he wasn't given money or time. He just didn't fit the club. And he didn't fit the style.
Do you know what?
You say, Kieran.
No.
Didn't fit the style, the way that he played, the way that he managed, the signings that he wanted were not good enough. When you see the situations that he wanted to get rid of Saka for Zaha.
That wasn't my My was, I feel like Emery has a bit of a mentality thing, a block, because when he was at PSG, he didn't do as well as he should have. He's at Arsenal. I feel like when he's at a big club, this is nothing against Emery because he's done an amazing job, but when he's at a Villarreal, he's at an Aston Villa. He does very, very, very well. And Sevilla.
It's almost shortman syndrome.
Yeah, it is. When the expectations are low, he always exceeds them. But when they're very high, he falls below. Yeah. That's my opinion.
And my opinion on Emery is going to be discussed more in our 2024 predictions. And to be fair, based on my previous predictions, Villa fans, you have nothing to worry about. But I've got a prediction on Emery we're going to get into at the moment that sort of backs my point up a little bit. But he is a Europa League manager with a Europa League style, with a Europa League head. He will never bring your club higher than 5th place. And if you're a club that 5th place is a success, fantastic. If you're a club where 5th place is failure, then no. I do not want Unai Emery anywhere near me. I love Unai Emery. I don't like Villa very much because they annoy me.
Good evening.
But I hope he does well. I have all the love in the world for Unai Emery. But the fact that anyone's saying, oh yeah, if he was still at the club, he would have won the league. I saw Semi recently. I can't remember who said it, but it was definitely something that was said. There's just situations where he's not good enough for a club like that. But surprise of the year, I can't think of anyone else because what he's done with this Villa side, as you say, at a club of that level, that's where he comes into his own. He comes into his own with a club of that level, and he's done very, very well. Yeah. Players that didn't look like they were bothered under Gerrard, players that just didn't perform under Gerrard. Look what he's done to Ollie Watkins, who was a good player beforehand, but he's just given him a new lease.
And for me, my only thing with Villa is, the thing is, because it's a full year, I obviously had in my start of season predictions, I think I had Villa 6th or 7th.
Yeah.
So I did see them being up there. And United, I had higher, I believe, the top 4.
Yeah.
But for me, United being as bad as they are is more of a surprise.
You had United 5th, okay. You had Aston Villa 7th.
So for me, I saw Villa being up there. It's more the performances for United which has been the surprise. But for me, either Villa or United, definitely, they're 2 surprises of the season for me.
Yeah. Well, I had United 3rd, you had them 5th. So where they are now is underperforming us. But I had Villa 9th, you had them 7th. So I think in terms of this season, that's in a nutshell.
Yeah.
And you think running on from last season where they finished, if you don't have any arguments to it, I think Villa went surprise of the year.
Yeah. Let's go Villa.
There we go. Villa surprise of the year. So the last award category, and I would say arguably, but unarguably, the most important category is our podcast moment of the year.
For the loyal listeners.
For the loyal listeners. But the podcast obviously started in August of this year. And as Mika have touched on by the fact that we're aware that we're not quite yet at the 7 listener point, but we just enjoy chatting shit. And that's the point the pod is on. And it's a really good time. And if you are listening, we genuinely appreciate the fact that you do so. And we've had a lot of fun the last couple of months, kids. And there's been some moments that the level of shit talking has just been highlights of my year, personally. not just podcast based. So we're going to share our picks each of our favourite moments on the pod. And there's been a lot, so it's hard to narrow down. But my one is going to be the general discussion around Sarpreet Singh. So the topic was a five-a-side team of players you think would lose in a fight to a Chihuahua. And this was earliest first 5 or so episodes, I believe. And there was some, I would say normal picks, but I think that's gone a bit far. But some
a topic like that.
Some picks that you'd actually know who they were. And then Keys, in his last pick, brought out Bundesliga second-tier Bundesliga player, Sarpreet Singh, the New Zealand powerhouse.
If you don't know him, your ball knowledge just ain't
who
there.
I'm pretty sure has played less than 5 games all season, if that. And we went into a deep dive discussion on Sarpreet Singh, and it was just one of the most ridiculous discussions I've been involved in. And
Hindu baller, thank you, Sarpreet.
Big love to Sarpreet Singh. And it was your argument for
quite passionate in the way
for why Sarpreet Singh, and it was the fact that that Hindus worship dogs.
It was the one. He's our Hindu hero, the dog worshipper, the Chihuahua puncher. The Chihuahua non-puncher.
Indeed.
Sarpreet Singh. What a man.
Sing it louder, sing it clearer, sing. Sarpreet Singh, the man, the myth, the legend. And Kears just went on a big, long, impassioned speech about why Sarpreet Singh would lose in a fight to a Chihuahua based on his Hindu heritage. And I think it was one of the funniest things I think I've ever heard. And that may say more about me than it does about you, listener. But it was a real highlight of my year. So I've got to put forward Sarpreet Singh chat as my pod moment of the year.
He did just play 8 minutes for Hansa and a 2-0 loss to Schalke.
What a guy.
Just in case your Sarpreet knowledge isn't quite.
Just to keep you up to date.
They did go down to 10 in the 41st minute.
So Kears, what is your choice going to be for your pod moment of the year?
My pick for this category has got to be the coffin chat. And well, it kind of just descended into chaos, really.
It was carnage.
It started off nicely, and then we got into the realms of that Twitter video where they're at their mate's funeral and they've stuck the coffin next to the goal. And it's just tapped one in. And it was just the thought of Papa.
It was so
Big Diop himself back flipping off the coffin.
There was Loire back flipping over Diop.
Oh, sorry. Diop's dead. Diop's dead, rest in peace. Loire. Benjani was pointing in the corner.
Yeah, well, I don't know why Benjani. That was my favourite thing. Is you kept mentioning. I kept trying to bring it back to Loire, and you kept mentioning Benjani for some absurd.
He's a point merchant.
You kept just saying Benjani over and over again. Oh,
Benjani?
I kept saying, Loire's doing backflips over this coffin. And you kept going, Loire's point.
No, Benjani's
point. It's like, why are you going with Benjani? And it just all combined together.
It was beautiful. That was one of, the cry and laughter of that moment.
And that was the first pod back in the UK as well. So I've got another one forward that I've just remembered. And I can't remember the point that drove us off the rails. But it was our first pod, face-to-face, which we recorded at Kieran's mum's house on a bank holiday. And I can't...
It was the Loose Golf Fest chat.
It was a Loose Golf Fest, that was it. It was a Loose Golf Fest chat, which some of it did get kept in. But
the episode was called, I believe, Loose Golf Fest.
It was indeed. And similar to the Loire coffin chat, listener, you need to sympathise with me as your editor on a lot of these podcasts, because there's been some situations, but that one I had to edit out so much of us just breaking down and just going off different tangents related to us. Tangents never related to loose goal fests and tight goal fests and that general situation. And we were sat there in between segments. We were sat there for a solid 15, 20 minutes just in pieces over how stupid that whole situation was, that we were just completely written off. So I think that might be a late cover as well.
That was up there as well. A lot of honourable mentions. What gets to our final?
I think it has to be Coffin Chat.
It has to be Coffin Chat.
It has to be Coffin Chat.
I think we both spoke about that briefly before, and yeah, I think that was the episode of just carnage seeping in. And
if you've not listened to the episode, go back.
Was it 5? You'll see it.
It's called Coffin Backflips. Is the episode, and it's a 5-a-side of. What was the 5-a-side?
I don't know. It was obviously dead Prem ballers, I think.
Oh, well, no, because Luala was alive, Muchie. It was It was. How do we? It was the names 5-a-side.
Was it? Yeah, I think. Was it?
Because the 5-a-side, it was Shaka Hislop, Breda Hongerland, Papa Boopa Diop, Lamana Luala, and Zinedine Zidane for you ASMR lovers. And we got into a discussion of how Luala and Papa Boopa Diop would be a great partnership. And then we discussed the group of guys with their coffin that tapped it in, and how when he celebrates, Luala will backflip over the coffin, and you started going about Benjani pointing.
He loves a point.
You can say a lot about Benjani, but he bloody loves a point.
Say what you want about the man, but we will remember he loves a point.
So those are this year, 2023, the Side Netting Podcast Awards.
Well,
congratulations to all of our winners.
Some losers in there as well.
But our winners: Arsenal against Bournemouth, Richarlison, Haaland, Aston Villa, and the podcast episode revolving around Coffin Chat. Well done, everyone. A great selection of winners. We'll see you all again, same time, same place, next year.